Wyoming is objectively not an attractive place to live. Its winters feel brutal and endless, and reality agrees. From September through May, snow accumulates and drifts into one of the highest totals for any state in the US, fueled by some of the most chilling cold on the continent. But then there's the wind. It's ferocious. Mountains funnel it through the state's uniquely massive valleys, regularly speeding it to 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. It is not at all uncommon that Interstate 80s stretched through the state has to close to trucks. Their height acts as a sail, and the wind will quite literally just blow them over. For those that brave the blizzards, there's not much reward. The largest city in the state is what other areas of the country would call a town. Cheyenne hosts just 65,000 people. Rather few white-collar industries have set up in the state, meaning the few jobs that do exist in the cities are far from lucrative. And out in the rural areas that dominate the state is what academics bluntly describe as some of the worst quality land in the country. With short growing seasons, limited water supply, and poor soil nutrition, even the abundance of open land attracts little agriculture. While the state certainly has a charm and allure that attracts some to its barren landscapes, the simplest, most straightforward measure of state attractiveness, population, indicates that Wyoming simply is just not an attractive place to live. And yet, Wyoming is home to oodles of wealth. In fact, it is home to so many oodles of wealth that the state has earned the superlative of the highest concentration of billionaires on a per capita basis in the entire country. And specifically, with remarkable consistency, they're here, Teton County. Back in the 1980s, it perhaps seems strange that Harrison Ford, at the peak of his fame, opted against the glitzy ascendant ski towns of Aspen or Sun Valley, but rather for this 800-acre property in Jackson, Wyoming, a comparatively sleepy cowboy town. Since then, the exclusive ranch nestled along the Snake River has become his home away from Orange County, his vacation house. But mere Hollywood riches feel almost middle class in Teton County. North of him, there's Amy Weiss, daughter of a Swiss medical manufacturing legacy who inherited more than $2 billion and calls this corner of the country home. Just down the road, there's former US Vice President and Halliburton CEO Dick Cheney. And a few miles further, there's John Mars, the richest man in the state and the 33rd wealthiest person on the planet, living in a relatively modest $6 million house nestled in a surprisingly nondescript neighborhood near the Jackson Hole Golf and Tennis Club. But Jackson isn't known for fame. It's known for wealth. So the core of its ultra-wealthy class is filled by an endless array of private equity partners and oil executives and tech CEOs with no notable name recognition. The area just punches far, far above its weight in terms of ultra-high net worth individuals. And of course, Teton County, the epicenter of this absurd wealth, regularly ranks as the single county out of thousands with the highest adjusted gross income in America. So, what rectifies this paradox? Why does the state least successful at attracting people simultaneously rank as the most successful at attracting those with the greatest ability to choose where they live? How has Wyoming become so weirdly wealthy? Well, for one, Teton County bears little resemblance to the rest of Wyoming. Situated on the southern end of the Jackson Hole Valley, Jackson, hemmed in by peaks, surrounded by glacial lakes, is arguably the most attractive spot in the state. With easy access to 2 national parks, 3 ski areas, and millions of acres of national forest, it's a destination where visitors and residents alike can ski, hike, bask in the country's rugged beauty, and wax nostalgic for a time before modern life, while simultaneously dining at fancy restaurants, flying directly in and out, and shopping at suburban staples like Whole Foods and Target. This is all relatively new. A century ago, Jackson was a remote ranching town with more cattle than people. Similar to iconic resort towns like Aspen and Sun Valley, it quickly transformed from a ranching outpost into a vacation destination in less than 50 years. Specifically, it was the establishment of Grand Teton National Park, followed by the arrival of skiing with the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort in the 1950s and 60s that put Jackson on the map. A compelling stop for road-tripping families in the summer and chic ski clientele in the winter. The transition from hidden gem to national wealth magnet was quick. Not long after Harrison Ford moved to the valley, James Baker, George H.W. Bush's Secretary of State, declared Jackson Hole to be one of his favorite places. That year, Jackson attracted international attention when Baker brought American and Soviet diplomats to discuss bilateral arms control policies and clarify the USSR-US relationship with the fall of the Berlin Wall. Today, so much money continues to flow in that the town's services are racing to keep up with the demand this wealth imposes. On its peak day last August, some 156 planes took off and landed at the Jackson Hole Airport, and almost all of them were private. There are so many private jets, in fact, that in early 2024, county officials approved the construction of a new $50 million private aviation facility for increasingly frequent Gulfstreams and Bombardiers flying in from Teterboro, Love Field, and Van Nuys. Among approvals in this project is Hangar 3, a 30,000 square foot facility in which to park private planes. There are also design plans for 2 more hangars totaling an additional 58,000 square feet of aircraft space. Such expansion makes sense. Jackson Hole presents the perfect, seemingly untouched landscape for coastal elites to project their fantasies onto, an authentic western town far from the problems of urban life. But there are countless towns across the American West that provide such refuge, and few have reached the absurd levels of wealth as here. While Jackson is the epicenter, there's a broader shift occurring across Wyoming. While wealthy residents are surging in Teton County, they're in-migrating to other parts of the state in large numbers too. Take Lincoln County, for example. It's not home to the state's capital and most populous city, Cheyenne, nor does it contain any of the bigger cities in Wyoming. It's mostly rolling plains, vast skylines, and just a few people scattered every square mile. In fact, its largest town, Kemmerer, is home to just 2,500 residents. Yet this county's transplanting residents have a mean income of $149,000, an outsized number for a region with little going on. Here, like Teton County, people are drawn to its landscapes. It's no surprise that the second Wyoming county to experience this wealth surge is tucked into the same part of the state, offering residents mountains, rivers, and an escape from the hustle and bustle. But most importantly, beyond the lakes and the peaks and the trails and the streams, Lincoln County, like Teton County, is still in Wyoming, and therefore happens to offer another crucially enticing advantage: tax benefits. While sections of Wyoming are as ruggedly beautiful and wildly magnetic as the country in Colorado and the mountains of Montana, what sets this state apart are its uniquely lax tax laws. Through a layering of partnerships, companies, and trusts, the state has become a de facto tax haven where everyone from Russian magnates, Spanish royalty, and wealth-amassing Americans can park some escape plan cash thanks to a creative concoction called the Cowboy Cocktail. What started here in Cheyenne as the formation of the Limited Liability Corporation in 1977 transformed many times and with many signatures over the decades. Today, the base ingredient is a Wyoming-based trust, which is then mixed with the layers of private companies and concealed ownerships, all created to provide protection and secrecy to those doing business in the state. But this sits at the center of Wyoming's conundrum. The exact policies that attract such massive amounts of wealth to the state prevent that same wealth from disseminating through the state. For example, the top 1% in Teton County averages $22 million in income, and about 75% of that income is typically passive, earned mostly from investments, meaning residents are earning the vast majority of their wealth not by working. This echelon is setting up residency in the state en masse in order to keep more of those gains because their exorbitant amount of money can go even further. There is, after all, no income tax, and there's no wealth tax in Wyoming. And so when wealth leaves billionaires' pockets in Wyoming, it's primarily to pay those in low-wage service sector jobs like landscaping, bartending, or ski patrolling. Like anywhere, trickle-down economics just isn't enough. There are massive amounts of money moving through the state, but it's a pass-through, not a stay put. Without that reinvestment or taxation, Wyoming doesn't gain much more than a superlative for the richest county per household or most billionaires per capita. And that creates some dystopian contrast. Here, not far from the home of billionaire John Mars, on this 18-hole semi-private course, a stark divide becomes apparent as there are the people that play the course, and then there are the people that work it. Billionaire and mega-millionaire golfers a few holes in, for example, will inevitably interact with the course's beverage cart attendant, perhaps buying a round of beers and leaving a tip. This cart employee, who just signed on for the season to serve cold cores to parched patrons for $15 an hour, also lives nearby. With their employee contract comes guaranteed housing, but it's not exactly lavish. For $98 a week, they are bunking up in a double dorm room off-site, and in some cases, living out of an RV with a free hookup site. Here, where the cost of living is 37% higher than the national average, this employee needs to make $47,000 annually to break even, according to living wage estimates. And yet, at $15 an hour, assuming a full schedule of shifts, they're barely raking in just 2/3 of that, at $30,000 a year. So, just to make ends meet, after a day shift on the course, the attendant turns to waiter, working an evening shift at the Snake River Grill where a 32-ounce Wagyu steak runs $205, half of their monthly rent. And if they themselves want to go out on their off day, they'll have to budget, as all of these restaurants have an average price range of $31 to $60 per person. Local restaurant and bar, one of the priciest in town, starts at $76 for two, assuming you're having burgers. The price quickly shoots up to $200 or $300 if one fancies a premium cocktail and any other entree. The truth is, the only thing steeper than the 13,000-foot peaks framing much of the region is the economic stratification among its residents. The top 1% of people in Teton County, earning an average $22 million per year, make 132 times more than everybody else. This gap, the highest wealth gap in the country, just keeps widening as Jackson's newest residents have a mean income of $661,000 annually, while everyone else averages $94,000. To put that in perspective, compare it to Aspen, its glamorous counterpart perhaps more often used as an example for being unattainable. And yet, Pitkin County, home to Aspen, ranks number 7 on the list of America's highest wealth gaps, where the average income of the top 1% is $6.6 million, just a quarter of the average in Teton County. Pitkin County is, notably, a pocket of the country where more than 50 billionaires have homes, but the gap between those elites and the rest of the town is counterintuitively far narrower than what's found in Wyoming. The stratification is on steroids in Teton County, and this increase in uber-wealthy residents raises the price on everything for everyone. Basic services are more expensive, childcare is costly, a simple hamburger is even more, because those at the top are willing to pay the premium. And the highest premium is real estate, where astronomical housing prices drive up the price for everyone. They're also making it harder for anyone else to get in. Those with enough money to own property here, the Harrison Fords, the Dick Cheneys, the Forbes 100 CEOs, live on vast ranches that manage to feel a world away from downtown. And crucially, they've made every effort to ensure their properties remain that way. Untouched, pristine landscapes with unobstructed views of the Tetons. While the establishment of Grand Teton National Park ensured that much of the valley would stay development-free, new residents have made new construction even more difficult through one simple trick: conservation easements. Much like the Duttons on the TV series Yellowstone, wealthy Jackson Hole residents use conservation easements as an oblique way to protect and grow their properties' value. Say you're a New York stock trader wanting to escape the daily grind. You visit Jackson Hole and fall in love with it, where you decide to buy this multi-million-dollar property to relocate to with a mansion and 50 acres. In discussing the move with your financial advisor, they recommend a conservation easement to protect your new property's value. By transferring the development, surface mining, and subdivision rights of 49 acres to the Jackson Hole Land Trust, you can retain ownership of the entire property, get a hefty tax deduction, and ensure your million-dollar view is protected in perpetuity. It's perfect. You can claim a charitable deduction of up to half your yearly income for 15 years after it's appraised and reduce your estate and property taxes. Plus, it makes your home more valuable in the long term. As demand and scarcity inevitably rise, you won't have to worry about any lower-income housing being built on your property. It's purportedly altruistic, yet at almost no downside to you personally. Although your land is conserved for public benefit, you don't have to maintain public access to it. It'll still be your property, as well as your future heirs, and it ensures that your house is the only development that will ever be built on it. Conservation easements are a practice that's allowed Jackson Hole Land Trust to hold more than 55,000 acres in trust in a region where over 97% of the land is federally protected. There's an extremely severe limit on where homes can be built here, which has taken property values to new, seemingly impossible heights. A place where wealthy folks can rest easy knowing they're the only ones who could afford to live there. And yet, with the Cowboy Cocktail's clandestine structure and Wyoming's lax tax policies, all of this wealth is sealed behind Teton County's gilded borders. For those who happen to live anywhere else in Wyoming, their proximity to massive wealth doesn't tangibly help them. Nowhere else has seen the levels of gentrification and modernization Jackson has experienced, and in spite of other attractions like Devil's Tower and the Wind River Range, no other region sees as much visitation. In fact, Wyoming's poverty rate is nearly equal to the national average of 11%, even though its average cost of living is comparatively lower. Teton County's wealth, then, is a stagnant force that largely circulates in and around Jackson Hole to satisfy its residents' idiosyncratic whims. So what pays the bills for the other Wyoming is that physical resource economy. Wyoming's located on some of the biggest shale, oil, and coal deposits in the nation. Collectively, these deep currents have created an unrivaled treasure trove that's still paying the bills. Drilling and mining succeed here precisely because it doesn't have many people. Oil and gas companies are essentially free to drill where they want to. All that's required is paying slightly higher taxes. Between property and value-imposed taxes, extraction now funds nearly half of the state budget. It's so valuable that when it comes to higher education, a sector that's often first on the chopping block for state budget cuts, the University of Wyoming has a comparatively low tuition rate. It averages less than half of its counterparts in neighboring states. But relying so heavily on taxing a single industry could be fatal, as any loss in severance or property tax revenue will impact crucial services. For as much carbon as there is here, it's not endless. Wyoming's coal production peaked in 2011, and its natural gas revenue is down by 74% in just over a decade. In 2020, Wyoming's governor even commented that small towns may have to be abandoned if the cost of maintaining them grows. The unfortunate truth is, when the wells run dry and the coal fields are finally laid bare, not much will be left of Wyoming. The last functioning economy may very well be the greater Yellowstone region, which includes Teton County. That's because, beyond the ultra-wealthy part-time residents who park their money here, millions of regular people from around the world visit to see the region's massive geysers and towering peaks, staying in gateway communities whose economies are buoyed by their presence. In 2021, Yellowstone visitors alone generated $834 million in economic benefits to the region. Like in Jackson, vast untouched landscapes protected from development have become extremely valuable, but while tourism economies have their struggles, these gateway communities are still more livable for the working class than Jackson. But even as tourists visit and tax revenue grows, as extraction fades and vacationing becomes a lifeline, Teton County's pre-existing problems will worsen. The rising cost of housing in and around Jackson Hole has driven prices skyward across the greater region, even in those comparatively cheaper gateway communities. For years, Yellowstone National Park has struggled to recruit employees to work in the park because of housing prices, with a $40 million anonymous donation specifically for affordable housing offering a measure of respite in the future. Many of those who have been boxed out of housing anywhere in Jackson Hole now commute from cheaper communities in Idaho over the treacherous Teton Pass, but the rising prevalence of million-dollar homes near Driggs and Victor threatens to push them even further away. So today's cycle will continue. Teton County will continue to exist, fueled by the exorbitant cash the wealthy spend on their vacations, but the wealth divide will continue to deepen, driving out the thousands of underpaid workers who can never afford to call this place home. Wyoming may be one of the wealthiest states in the country when measured in one very particular way, but it's simultaneously one where a given working class individual has perhaps some of the lowest likelihood of accumulating wealth themselves. Wealth in Wyoming is not grown or spread or shared. It rather simply exists. In the winter, Wyoming essentially has two key industries: skiing and coal mining. Both are pretty fascinating, with huge operational complexity, which is why we made two videos about the logistics of each. Both are part of our Nebula original series, The Logistics of X, where we cover how the modern world works, much like we do here on YouTube, but in even greater depth and on even more topics. Nebula, of course, is the creator-owned and run streaming platform that we designed to be the best home to the stuff we make. For example, we decided pretty early on that it had to be subscription-based, which might seem unintuitive. But ad-supported video platforms have flaws. The creators on them are incentivized to chase clicks at all costs, and there's only so much investment in production quality that makes sense financially. But with a subscription-supported platform, we make money by offering a good enough service that you decide to stick around and keep paying for the subscription. That incentivizes quality, but also, crucially, it provides the funding for us to make bigger swings with ambitious Nebula originals. A few months ago, we shot our highest budget show to date, called The Getaway, and while we haven't shared many details yet, the trailer is coming out soon, which will explain the rather ambitious premise for the show. And of course, there's plenty more creators than just us on Nebula. We've curated an amazing selection of a couple hundred thoughtful creators making meaningful, entertaining content, and we're always releasing more and more original, exclusive shows and movies. And best of all, Nebula helps support the creators. It provides a predictable, stable, additional revenue stream for us, so when you sign up at nebula.tv/Wendover, you're helping us keep making these videos, even here on YouTube, and to make them even better. By signing up at that link, you'll also get 40% off an annual plan, which brings the cost down to just $2.50 a month. A great price to be able to watch all our normal stuff ad-free, all the original content, and help support us, so thanks in advance if you end up giving Nebula a try.